feel now it's been a long day because since early this morning. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I'll worry with this. So I'm Barry Ardley. I've done this piece of work with Professor of Martin at Coventry University, an independent research. Essentially, the work comes out of a PhD study, which I did some years ago, where I got interested in the whole idea of tacit knowledge. The idea that there's expertise which you can't easily write down or codify. It's expertise based within people's working worlds, and the idea that there's a dual logic to business. One is a set of clear procedures through which people do things, and then there's another set of activities which are almost unspoken but which are shared in the workplace. So I'm actually looking at entrepreneurial marketing, which is simply the fusion of entrepreneurship and marketing. It's a discipline which brings together marketing and entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurial marketing is the basis of this, and there's quite a lot of literature which looks at marketing strategy in small companies. It's widely documented. I mean, some of the key things that come out say that, well, it's these small businesses are much leaner, more flexible than big businesses, that they are very adaptable, and that's some of the key things which come out. They are different from big businesses and perhaps have much longer linear planning processes in their work. I think there's a bit of a limitation to that approach, where the focus is on trying to generate lots of detailed ways of doing business. It's not quite the case where it can all be written down and codified. And so it's saying that there's an area of strategy in business which is tacit, unspoken, but needs to be uncovered for the reasons I'll come on to in a moment. So what do we mean by tacit knowledge? It comes from the Greek word metis. It's all about knowledge committed to practice. It's knowledge which can be sometimes ambiguous, unknown before you actually do it, transient. It's the things that people know how to do. You can't always necessarily write it down or talk about it very easily. But nevertheless, it's knowledge which people have when they undertake certain tasks. Like craftspeople is a good example. They may not be able to go through the stages which and easily show it to something, but they know how to do it. So I think that's a good example. It's intuitive knowledge of work. People sense things. I think that's a good thing to do because I know it's based on my experience. That's a good decision to make. Would be the type of approach adopted like that. However, strategy, if you look in textbooks, it's often laid down as a set of very clear procedures. This is how to do a marketing plan. This is how to segment the market. Very often just very prescriptive language which is laid down in books on business strategy, which doesn't often take very much account of organisational context, like the difference between big businesses and small businesses. So I think we just have to recognise that it is important to learn principles. There's a whole other area of knowledge which is missing from business education. They're examples of explicit knowledge frameworks from entrepreneurial marketing. So these are the types of processes which companies need to undergo. 3 different sets of strategy approaches to doing business from a marketing perspective. These frameworks can be taught, understood, easily digested. If life was that easy, everybody would be a millionaire. There's a lot more knowledge which isn't captured in those sorts of frameworks. That sort of framework which drives the understanding of people going through business education. So Tacit is often built into the business and can't easily be copied. If you work at a company, you work there for 10 years, you've got that knowledge which another company won't have. If you move to another company, your company loses that knowledge. So a lot of decision making is evoking knowledge that's based in working experience. Okay, so what we wanted to do was try and interrogate this unspoken area, tacit dimension. It's a key aspect of strategy creation, and we want to illuminate the ways in which this knowledge is manifested. So that was a research question, fairly focused, to look at the ways in which tacit knowledge contributes to the entrepreneurial shaping of marketing strategy. Do people in companies recognise this area of experiential based knowledge? So we look through the literature. What does the tacit actually? What is it made up of? We recognise it's made up of these three areas: intuitive knowledge, gut feelings, the situation, the context, business context. Every business is different. Every decision is different according to the type of business, and it has to be shared as well. So this communities of practice idea, but it's intersubjective. So tacit knowledge is shared between a community of people in the workplace. So we said they're the three areas of tacit. Decision making is based around those three areas. There's quite a lot of literature which we trawl through to put those three categories together. So the idea was to interrogate those three areas and see if we could find any evidence for them. So all the data was based in small businesses, 16 interviews with senior managers, either the owners or the managers of the company, within the B2B and the B2C domain. And we organised the categories according to the dimensions that are identified there: the intuitive, the situational, the intersubjective. We went through the transcripts looking for evidence related to those areas. So it's a form of discourse analysis. Which is quite interesting. My PhD was, just very briefly, when managers talked about marketing, they used three different types of languages. Marketing is a rational discourse, classical models of business. Marketing is a tacit area. A lot of them recognise that it's about gut feelings and intuition, and then also as a discourse of conflict. There was a lot of conflict about what marketing meant in the organisation. People had different views about it, and there was conflict around that. So it's interesting. So discourse analysis was used. So the intuitive gut feelings. They all saw being entrepreneurial was important. They wanted new ideas, so they said yes. We're always looking for the staff to come up with new ideas, and they said a lot of new ideas came from intuitive judgment. And this is from one respondent. Going to a textbook or a manual within the workplace doesn't necessarily provide the strategy which companies need to have to succeed. Geared towards growing. We let people run with personal projects. People could work independently, look at things they're interested in. If they think it's a good idea, we'll run with it and they can try it. It's informed and fluid. If they think it's a good idea, if it is a good idea, we let them run with it. And it's a digital marketing agency, quite a big one. Was the case. So there's evidence for the intuitive. Run with their gut feelings, let them try different projects and they think it's going to work. So fairly flexible. Next section, planning and doing, situated logic, context, what's the nature of the business. If you look at a lot of textbooks or strategy documents, it's all about one way to do things. Here we're saying, what's the need within a local business? There's a local logic of action. Well, what will work in one company won't work in another. So that makes strategy making quite more complicated. So who are the suppliers you work with? What would work with them which might not work with another set of suppliers? So it's important, isn't it, to work within the local situation. I think that gets neglected in a lot of teaching about management. So this ability to reflect on the situation is recognised by the owner of a printing company, who was the second one that we interviewed. So people think, well, they think about, look at the customer in front of them, what does that particular customer want? We can do something for this customer which will work for them, but will not necessarily work for another customer. So what's the situation? What's the grounded reality in which we operate? There is not one rule for everybody. Things work differently depending on the local situation. Everything is indexical. If you look at ethno-methodology as a framework. Okay, so the third area, so we've looked at gut feelings, broadly, instinct as a way to make decisions. Looked at the intersubjective, we looked at the situation, the local situation in which people find themselves. And the third one is intersubjective, almost a sort of communities of practice. Knowledge is developed in groups. Work groups are a classic example, aren't they? People working together will develop ways of doing things which aren't written down in textbooks or aren't written down in the work manuals. That does represent a way to do things, what's in the manual, but there's also this way of people working and talking together and sharing experiences and just showing people how to do things, which is also important. So this dual logic, codified knowledge, but plus the tacit area as well. Just to argue this tacit area is undervalued. So networks are important where there's shared expertise. Clearly there's obviously AI software coming along and data processing capabilities, but as of yet, there's still a whole body of intellectual capital held in people's minds and in their shared practice. Okay, so we found a quote for that as well. Built a business model on the network where people come together, share their knowledge and expertise together and generate expertise within those networks.
So please to
to
add something.
Okay. Right. So these three ways of creating a strategy have been successful for all these companies. They recognise this area of the tacit, recognise that it's not just written down knowledge, but it's also the knowledge in the heads and minds of people, and in their experiences and how they act and think and do. So some concluding points. Tacit knowledge plays a central role in entrepreneurial strategy creation. Explicit knowledge does not on its own provide a route to success, but it's the only way that often things are taught to business students or taught to new starters in companies until they get working into the system. Decisions around innovation are often made in an SME situation, made in a local setting where people have a vision of the future, an intuitive vision of the future, that they work together. And it's very much about that local business and that local business's needs. So I think research-informed understanding can only come from immersion in these local situations. So I think that may be a call for, if we're going to do more research, to look at local conditions more and less about trying to look for general understandings of how things work in a wide-ranging basis. So I think there's some key points. Interesting. Just a final comment from Hunt, key marketing authority, who talks about the success of marketing is going to depend on the understanding of strategy in the future. too much marketing is probably concerned. What social media post will work best next, but there's a key role for strategy. Strategy is about, explicit understanding, but also this area of tacit knowledge. Well, I think that's it. Yeah, so it's halfway through this paper, so we want to try and develop it to about 6 sides written at the moment, so put a bit more in, maybe a bit more control. I don't know what you think, any comments?
Okay, very good. So, do you have any questions for Barry? Yeah, I'm thinking already you will have a question, right? As an entrepreneur, you don't know. Yes.
I'm fascinated just from my own experience of trying to set up marketing and being on the receiving end of courses about marketing. That wasn't acknowledged, and that's so valuable. I'm just interested in how you differentiate between knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. Wisdom suggests, I mean this is purely without thinking about it too much. I think wisdom is perhaps a bit more wide-ranging, isn't it? Maybe wisdom you're drawing on past experience a bit more, whereas knowledge perhaps might suggest something that's a bit more immediate, a bit more codified. But that's an important point to maybe distinguish between
a lot of stuff about the information, then the knowledge. The question is wisdom.
I think the example didn't talk about it much, but the navigating a ship before you had GPS satellites, that you'd have to perhaps use your judgment to decide whether to take sail that day or something like that.
Thank you.
Good point to think about. Thank you. That's helpful.
Sorry, may I ask you?
Yes.
Kevin is not good, and I'm not an economist, I'm not an entrepreneur, but I want to ask you, what do you mean as saying tacit knowledge?
Yeah, it's unspoken knowledge that's not written down. It's codified. It's the opposite of codified knowledge.
Yeah.
It's the gut feeling.
Intuition?
It's 3 areas. Intuition. Do you feel that might work? Do you feel that might work? My experience of doing things in the past suggests this might be the way to do it. So that.
I understand that we need an intuition to run a successful business.
Yeah. Not just that, but that's part of it.
It's one of them.
And so that's it's about that instinct. And the local understanding. The situation in which the business operates, rather than saying here's a set of procedures and rules to follow. It's also about understanding what works for us. I can remember a few years ago interviewing a marketing director in the company who said graduates can come in, or business graduates can come in and write a very good business plan, but they know it's nothing.
No needs of the local.
I know it says there's no relationship to what we need in this business. That plan is not enough. They need to understand our customers and the local needs of the business. So it's
Can we say that tacit knowledge is a part of marketing strategy, and it shows us that helps to marketing?
I think yes. That must be. People work in businesses. People have tacit knowledge built into them. I think they have it there.
They write on the paper what you
they acquire it they can get it very quickly. So everybody has a degree of tacit knowledge. So if you work in an organisation for 8 months, 18 months, 18 years, you build up knowledge like that. And that's ignored, I think, I suppose really suggesting it's ignored a lot in business education, that approach. They just need to say, let's have a look at this area. It means sort of getting students to work in businesses more, perhaps, and understand what's going in businesses.
I was just going to say to you, or ask you where you saw experiential learning.
Yeah. So
Fitting into this.
even managers could work in action learning, I think, it may be a good approach. Sit down, what problems have we got, which might be resolved through use of our experience.
I remember I had two uncles who were an entrepreneur, and then later my husband became an entrepreneur. And then when I'm studying my first business degree and talking to two uncles, because they're not very educated, and then also a migrant to Hong Kong. And then they said, all right, Connie, you're going to study business. But I have tried to hire 2 master's degrees, 2 MBAs. But what they're saying to me is all the theories. But I can just tell them what to do in just 2 seconds. But I cannot rationalize why. But I know A works, but B does not work. But I cannot rationalize. But using their theory, pros and cons, all the statistics, it's too slow to make a decision, and you will lose that business already. So sometimes it is but it takes time. The tacit knowledge are accumulating, right? On the Thursday, for example, I can also see how my husband are paying a lot of cost to learn how to be an entrepreneur, to avoid a lot of bad experience, and then take in a lot of lessons, before he can be a bit smarter in doing business. So it also takes a lot of education, but maybe is it a classroom education or in different formats of education?
Maybe in a different form, working on problems.
Or sharing best practices, right?
Or learning from mistakes.
I mean, it doesn't invalidate it doesn't mean that explicit knowledge is wrong or bad. It just says, well, it's just another way to look at things.
They are saying, my uncle is saying that the theories are helping to support their gut feeling.
Yes,
Yeah.